So I'll officially start the webinar. Welcome everyone. Welcome to our third webinar of 2026. We're already in March, another quarter almost down and underway. I'm Brooke Lombard, the Managing Director of both RTO Works and Didasco Online, and I'll be your host today. I'm joined once again by Sally Tansley, the founding force behind our business. Hello, Sally.
Hello. Hello,
And
everyone.
our head of consulting team as well. And also Scott Templeton, who's our compliance consultant at RTO Works and former ASCO auditor. So hello, Scott, and hello, Sally.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all here.
A very, very warm welcome to all of our RTO Works members and retainer clients. It's always lovely to have you guys with us, and we really appreciate the opportunity that we have to work with you every month. We really value your support. Your commitment to quality and professionalism in the vet sector is something that we really admire as well. Also, a big welcome to everybody else joining us. We're proud to offer these webinars free of charge every month because we believe that professional development should be accessible to everybody in the sector, and that learning together helps us stay sharp, and everything's constantly changing. So this is a way for us to keep on top of those changes. Today's session, we're following the same format. We've found it works for everyone. It works for us. So we'll keep going with this format. It'll be 1 hour, a 45-minute discussion with Sally and Scott, followed by 15 minutes for questions before we wrap up. So please do feel free to pop any questions you have at any point during the webinar in the chat. We will try and get through as many as possible. And for those of you who are comfortable, you can also take your microphone off at the end and ask a question. If there's time for that, there should be, as there was last month. You will also receive a recording of the session and a certificate of attendance via email. So please check your emails, maybe check your junk if you didn't get that. And if you do have any problems, please just email hello@rtoworks.com.au and one of our team members will be able to help you. We are actually putting all of our webinars up on our YouTube page, and these are accessible on our website in the webinars section. So if you are looking for a previous webinar to do some professional development, for something that is relevant to you, watch those webinars. They're free of charge, they're easy to access, and you can add them to your PD log. So today we'll be looking at how to strengthen your validation approach so you can walk into audit with confidence. If assessment review is about getting things right before tools are used, then validation is about demonstrating that those assessments actually work in practice. So during this practical and straight talking session, Sally and Scott are going to answer or explore such questions as, what does meaningful validation really look like beyond a checklist? How can RTOs validate assessment decisions in a practical and defensible way? And how can validation strengthen quality rather than just satisfy an audit requirement? So with that in mind, we will unpack these ideas together today. And yeah, thanks Sally and Scott for being with us to share your insights.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Brooke. And absolutely right about the PD as well. So this isn't just a chance to talk about validation. It's obviously a fantastic opportunity to undertake some valuable professional development. So don't forget to add it to your PD register.
Great. So yeah, we want to make sure we offer you guys something really practical and useful. So yeah, please use this as PD for your organization. So to get started, it's helpful to make sure that we're all working from a really clear understanding of what validation actually is. Under the standards, validation is the review of the assessment system to ensure that assessment tools are aligned with the training product and the requirements set out in the standards, and that assessment practices and assessment judgements are producing consistent outcomes. I think that word consistent is really important. In practical terms, assessment validation is a mandatory, systematic, and retrospective review of both the assessment tools and the completed assessments. Its purpose is to confirm that assessments consistently meet training package requirements and that the evidence collected is valid, reliable, sufficient, current, and authentic, and that the assessor judgments are consistent, fair, and also defensible. So, Sally, that's the formal definition, but in reality, some RTOs do still find validation confusing.
That's right, because I think we touched on this at last month's webinar as well, because because I've been around quite a long time. In the past, validation was actually what was done before the assessment, and moderation was, the actual review of the student work. And then it kind of changed at some point by ASCA, actually. So now it's really important to make those distinctions, and particularly now with the new standards. So we've got the assessment review, which is before delivery, and we've got the validation, which is the actual student work. So really important to get that right. And as I just said, assessment review was the last month's webinar. So if you did want to have a look at that webinar, Ben's just going to put the link in the chat as well.
Yeah, I can see that's there now. Perfect.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so that's right, Sally. So validation is the retrospective review. Both activities are important and must be carried out to ensure your assessment system is working and also to meet the requirements of the standards.
Okay, so
Mm.
we'll jump straight in. I'll ask you guys some questions and yeah, we'll take it from there. So which standard does validation relate to, Scott?
Okay, so validation directly relates to outcome standard 1.5, and it also requires that one or more of the people partaking in the validation, they need to meet the credential for validation, which is specified in the credential policy. So you're covering two different bits of legislation there, so the outcome standards and the credential policy.
Yeah, that's right, Scott. And of course, just as a side note, it is important to make sure that to understand that if there's issues with assessment, it does flow on to many other standards in any case. Like, for example, thinking about CRICOS, obviously that would flow onto course progress, all sorts, and continuous improvement, quality assurance, etc.
Yeah, very true, Sally. It can have that bit of a domino effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the legislation out the way, let's unpack the validation. Who can participate in validation activities and what qualifications or experience is required to be part of that process?
Okay, so for this one, I'll get Ben, if you can put up the first slide there and we can just have a little look at that. So validating assessment products. So this should be popping up. Yep, so there we go up on the screen now. Okay, so validating assessment products, excluding TAE products, one of the people involved must have one of the following validation credentials. So here we've got so a version of the Cert 4 in training and assessment. So whether it's the 22, 16, or the 10. A secondary teaching qualification and the VET delivered to school students teacher enhancement skill set, and also a version of the following assessor skill sets, so the 19, the 11, or the 01 there. And also, well, not also, you need to have one of these. Another option there is a diploma or higher level qualification in adult education or vocational education and training. Just an interesting one there with the a qualification in adult education. That's sort of sometimes between various RTOs and people in the industry can be a bit open to interpretation, but you really need to have a look at the actual what's in the qualification, what's covered, just to see that adult education, it actually is an adult education qualification. So I know, Brooke, you have a bit of experience with that recently. You're actually undertaking some studies at the moment. You're doing a degree in adult education.
Yeah, that's right. So I've actually got a diploma level, which it's changed now. The original one was the Diploma of Training Design and Development, which is now the Diploma of VET, which has the two streams. But the higher level one, that's right. There are a couple of good universities out there who are offering a bachelor degree in adult and vocational education. I'm actually studying with Charles Sturt University, and it's called the Bachelor of Adult and Vocational
Okay.
education. So it's specifically around vet, and it's just a bachelor degree, or there's also a master's qualification,
Yep.
but it is all about vet. So the whole thing is
Cool.
dedicated to vet. So yeah, so something like that would be considered a high
Yeah.
level qualification.
Oh,
But yeah, you just
fantastic.
want to make sure that it's specifically for the Australian vet market.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, important to know. Yeah. So it's common practice to conduct validation as a group activity or to divide and conquer and involve several people. But just make sure one of the participants holds one of these qualifications or skill sets. Also, people sometimes think that if you're involved in the development or the delivery of the assessment, that you can't be involved. But this actually isn't correct. So this was the case under the old standards. But even a report I actually saw recently, the auditor still referred to operating under this misconception from the old standards. But under the new standards, you're able to, as long as other people are involved there as well.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that it's different for a TAE product. So what if a TAE product is being validated, Scott?
Okay, so I'll also get Ben to put the next definition up there on the screen again. So this is if a TAE product is being validated. So as we can see, to validate in any relation to any AQF qualification or skill set from the TAE training package, that enables individuals to make assessment judgments. At least one of the people undertaking the validation activity must have an AQF qualification or skill set at least to the level being validated. So it's just very important to have, whether you're doing non-TAE products or TAE products, just to ensure that someone involved actually can cover these requirements under the credential policy.
So if you're validating the diploma level TAE qual, then they would need to have the diploma themselves, not
Yes.
just the
Yeah, you
cert.
need the diploma level qualification. Yeah.
Yeah, in order to validate it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the legislation's pretty clear on that difference between normal training products and the TAE.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how do I, if I'm a new RTO, I've just sort of set up, or how do I know where to get started? Which product should I validate first, and when should I actually conduct this validation?
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about it at a high level and then we'll go into some of the details. But basically, using a validation schedule, or you might call it a plan as well, that clearly sets out, what unit you're going to validate, the rationale for choosing that unit, which we'll talk about in a moment, who will be involved in the validation. And as we sort of said before as well, it's generally a team, but you can do it with a small team of even two people. I've been doing that recently, where I'm the vet person, and then I work with a subject matter expert. And then you say, when it's going to occur as well. So obviously spreading it out over a period of time for the 5 years as well. And that schedule should also, talk about the sample size and ideally have some space where the outcomes of the validation could be summarized, which you can then put into your register. We'll talk a bit more about all of these points, and that validation schedule can be something really simple, a Word document with columns, it can be an Excel sheet, and there are some new sort of fancier ways of doing that through certain systems as well, which can be used.
Yeah, that's true. It's great that you mentioned validate rationale for validation there, Sally, because it's not always the case where you're just going to validate units in chronological order, just the way they're listed out on TGA or even the way in which they're delivered. But there's a number of factors that can contribute, to the order or which units of competency are actually prioritized. So things such as whether they're high risk units, whether they've had a high volume of participants, or perhaps even if there's a unit which serves as a prerequisite to other units in the qualification. And, even like, say, for example, there could be a unit where several different assessors are assessing that unit. So there's
Can
various
I
different,
just stop you
yeah,
briefly there, Scott?
yeah.
What would you say, like, just to give our participants an example, what would you say would be a high risk unit? What would be your definition of that?
Yeah, well, high risk units, they could be units which can lead to a licensed outcome or a unit that involves like
Say like babies and toddlers from
yeah,
childcare
absolutely,
or
things like
First
that.
aid, like if you've got first aid on scope
Yeah,
or
first aid there. Yeah, yeah. Obviously, I feel the childcare qualifications there with babies and toddlers and that. Just things that have like a certain level of practical
Mm.
involved, where you really think like this is a qualification. This is a unit of competency which could potentially have a high risk if the assessment's not covered appropriately. So even a lot of
Mm.
units involved in the trade calls as well.
yeah, exactly like
Working at
like
heights,
tests, yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
machinery, so forth.
And
I
Yeah.
always
if you've got like a business, some business units on scope, you've got some construction units on scope, my mind tells me, well, the
yeah.
construction units have a more, they're riskier because,
Yep.
they're working on job sites, whereas in an office, the risks are less. So perhaps I'll start with my construction and then do my business after.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
mm,
always like to think of it, there's a unit like manage meetings. So,
mm,
say the person doesn't manage the meeting very well, it's not good, but no one's going to be harmed. But
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, if
absolutely.
they don't look after a baby and toddler
yeah,
correctly, then it's not so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
I think
And so,
the volume of participants is a real big one as well. So if you've got a unit where, 10 to 15 people are going through it, and then another unit where it's, hundreds, I would be, choosing the unit that's had a lot more participants go through it as well. So,
mm. So
yeah.
there's no one size fits all. It's once again, it's in down to our interpretation of analyzing the risk involved on
Yeah,
our
yeah.
scope and selecting accordingly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
And also important for listing the outcomes of the activity. So what activity should be followed up? So, when you've done the validation, what are the outcomes of it? So what are we going to do now? Was there something to fix up? Does something need to be amended? So when you have the table that Sally mentioned, whether it's done in Word or Excel or however you're going to record it, make sure there's a section where, what activity needs to be carried out and when that action was actually taken. So, at the end of the
Mm.
day, if validation activities they highlight poor assessment practice, the flow-on effect should result in assessment tools and assessment processes being amended.
Mm.
And so, with these activities, what we're really doing is we're testing the effectiveness of the actual assessment that is in place. So, there's no point doing, going through and doing validation just to tick a box because
Yeah.
Astra wants you to. It
Don't do it
really
as a
is
chore.
it's for the benefit of the actual assessment system you have in place with the RTO, and then
Yeah,
also the flow-on effect to the student because the student wants to go there and they want a genuine experience. So they want to learn the
Mm.
appropriate content that the unit, should be cover as per the training package, and also the way it's marked and assessed. Have
Mm.
they, completed the assessment to the level that it should be? So
Mm.
yeah, it really
Yeah.
is a way to test the effectiveness of the system you have in place.
I hate to stop you there, Scott, but in the
Yep.
interest of time, as I am chief timekeeper today, I'm going to
Sure.
move it along.
hmm
So we've still got quite a bit of content to get through, but briefly, how do you know what sample size to validate? So
yeah,
is
and
there a
that's good
rule?
that you're asking this, Brooke, because someone just brought that up as a question.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Okay, perfect. We'll cover that one then.
Yeah,
What
cool,
it
cool.
sounds
Okay.
like.
So several factors to consider, Brooke. You need to take into account the completions that have taken place. So as I said before, if there's been hundreds of completions, then you'd be validating a larger sample,
Hmm.
rather than a unit that's had about 10 completions. So you need to consider whether there's been any feedback or complaints. So if you've got a unit where it's been appealed a lot, or like the students are unhappy with information you've got back through surveys or feedbacks, regarding the assessment or the outcomes of assessment, then that would also go towards the rationale.
That
And,
should become a
then you'd
priority
want
unit.
maybe sample a bit bigger.
Hmm.
There's also actually a validation sample size calculator on the ASPA website. So that also could be used to guide you. So this includes adding information such as the number of assessment judgments, so the estimated error level, and also your confidence level. So
Okay.
one thing though, that with the sample size calculator, it does give some really large sample sizes. I've had a bit of a play around with it during the week. So look, it's generally my opinion, and I think you could probably agree on this, Sally, that you can find issues with the assessment practice and make the validation valuable, even by looking at, say, two, three, four student assessments per unit. You start to find trends then. So I don't think you need to be doing, 10 or 20 students per unit. Obviously, depending on the size of the operation, but you can start to find trends or issues or common themes, just by looking through even two or three assessment outcomes.
And Scott, when you mention completions, how far back are you talking?
Look, this would also be up to the RTO about how they wanted to conduct their validation, but I would say about 6 months. So the number of completions in the past 6 months would certainly be a large enough pool to sample from.
And then also just going back to what we were talking about scheduling validations. Obviously, the rules have changed from the old standards, and there's none of the 3 years thing anymore. But basically, they say that every training product on the RTO scope has to be done once every 5 years, or on a more frequent basis if the RTO becomes aware of risks to training outcomes, changes to training product, or feedback. Now, something really interesting here is that training product is obviously a qualification, a unit, or a skill set. So, I don't know whether it's actually on there anymore. Mohammed just put a link in the chat about
Mm.
how many units in a qualification should be validated. And I remember that Asquith did have a fact sheet that basically was saying two. Because, yeah, as I said, training product is a unit or a qualification. The terminology is ambiguous there. But I would think, though, like, again, we kind of go back to our risk thing. So, say if I've got a BSB qualification, I would think for me personally, it's appropriate to validate at least two of those units. Whereas if it's like a CHC or a CPC or some other high risk qualification, I'd probably do more. So there is some grey there, but I wouldn't say that you have to do every single unit from a qualification, and I
It'd be
don't think that
overkill.
would be, yeah, I don't think it would be worthwhile. Yeah, so that's really
Scott,
interesting. And I
yeah.
just one last thing as well, in audits as well, that's not been an issue in terms of like how many units per qualification. Sorry, but what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, like, it's like anything in vet, really, where there's so many shades of grey.
Yeah.
Decide what you're doing and then create a rationale for why you've decided
Mm.
this. And maybe just
Yeah.
write that rationale down and go, I've got so many trainers available. I've got so many products on scope. I've decided because community services is higher risk, I'm going to do 4 units from community services and I'm only doing 2 from my business. And maybe just document that rationale, perhaps that
Yeah.
the auditor asks, you can go, this is why I've done it this way.
Yeah, and that's basically using risk assessment,
Mm,
to conduct the operation there. Just one quickly, before we move on, with when you have several different trainers all assessing the same unit, with the sample size which you take, don't just use one assessor's completed assessment. I would obviously sample a few of the different trainers, so you're getting a good general sample of what assessment's actually being covered.
mm.
That's another thing to take into consideration.
Yeah, there's a really interesting question that's just popped up in the chat that Sally's responded to, which we'll leave it for question time. But yeah, that
Hmm.
is an
Yeah, that
interesting
was
one.
interesting, wasn't it? Mm.
Because is it a TAE product? Because it's a TAE unit. So I'll just let everyone know. Maybe we can all vote on it and
Yeah.
decide at the end. QIBA has asked, in BSB 80120, the grad dip of management learning, there is a core unit, TAE LED 803. To validate that unit, is it sufficient for the validator to have the same course and the UOC, or do they need to have the higher level diploma of TAE as well? So
So
maybe
I
we
said
can vote on it.
I thought it was fine, but yeah, again, it's grey, isn't it?
It is because what's the definition of the TAE training product? It's a unit
Yes,
within the business, but
yes.
maybe at the end we'll all have a vote and
Mm.
we'll figure it out. Okay, so we have our validation schedule. We've decided which products we're going to validate. We've set our sample size. How do we do it?
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll get Ben to put another little sh slide up on the screen now. So this is of the validation tool that we use here at RTO Works. So I'll just wait for that. Yep, and there we go. We're up on the screen there. So when completing the validation activity, this is the tool that we use, and it basically sets out the validation details. And as we can see, includes the student name, number, obviously, as we mentioned before, the rationale for the validation, the name of the assessor, and the date of the decision. So the tool, as we scroll through it, will also, you'll see it involves several questions, which we would cover. Okay,
And
so.
also, Scott, it does have there to make sure a prompt to make sure the assessment review's been completed already as well, which is kind of good in that on that first page. Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. So you don't want to put the cart before the horse there. So no, that's very important,
yeah,
Sally.
That's
that's it.
good.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question is about is the required assessment documentation, has it been completed? So this is often overlooked in validation. People just go straight for the actual assessment tools. So looking at like your checklists and multiple choice and things like this. But this it's imperative to check the cover sheet to see whether it's been signed off, has it been dated, all the relevant data been completed. Having conducted audits for ASQA, I've seen on several occasions people, have not dated assessments, have not been signed either by the student or the assessor, and it really just, opens up a whole can of worms around the authenticity of it. So, yeah,
And
get
that
it.
feeds into your continuous improvement because then you're noticing which trainers are consistently not filling in dates and you can go and have those performance discussions with them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah. And so the validation tool then must validate. So if assessment responses have been marked correctly according to the marking guide, so the marking guide is there not only for assessors, to get the answers to the questions, but also it really provides guidance on the type of response that's required and also to what level the question must be answered. So it takes into consideration, if it's a Cert 4 qual, you want to see that the student is giving a Cert 4 answer. If there's a minimum amount of words that you would be required in the answer, that's what you'd like to see in that sort of guidance. So the benchmark guidance is there to allow consistency between trainers and assessors and really give them the information that they expect to see in the answer. So,
So that's
yeah.
that question. I think Ben, can you scroll down to the next page because that was that question
Oh,
there.
right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That thing that you mentioned about word counts in questions, Scott, I have to say I don't like that because
Okay.
what we've tried to do in our assessment tools, we've tried to use guidance word like outline, describe, and then said to the student what those mean. So like list would literally be list.
Hmm.
Describe might be like a paragraph. But I feel like if you have word, I saw this recently in I was doing a validation for someone and it was said, answer the question in 500 words. And I actually looked at the student answer and they'd done it in 270 and the answer was
Mm.
still enough. So yeah, so
Mm.
I don't really like word counts. That's
That
just
Yeah,
Okay.
as content developers, RTO Works content department hates word limits.
Yeah.
But if the assessment says do this in 500 words, and that's what the assessment says, and the students given 300 words. Well, they shouldn't really be signed off as satisfactory or competent. So once again,
Yeah.
by picking up that issue in your validation, you can go
Yeah.
back and go, oh, is a word count? I mean, you can have word counts. There's nothing wrong with them. You can have them.
Yeah.
It's just a personal preference that we don't think they work very well. They cause problems.
Okay.
But once again, you're going through this and you're going, oh, is this the best way? I can see that 20 assessments, none of the students have met
Yeah,
the word limit.
exactly.
Let's review our
Yeah.
assessment
Yeah.
tool again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So I
you've
guess
got
like the real
Polly.
takeaway there is with
Mm,
the benchmark guidance is just ensuring that there's enough guidance there that when you're looking at the student's work and the response that they've provided, whether it's completed to the level that you would expect as per the guidance. So,
yeah.
it's written to that
Yeah.
correct AQF level and
Yeah.
the judgments between assessors are consistent. So,
And what's so the next one of the questions is very relevant here. We'll answer it. What happens if it's assessed through an LMS system? Is a signature required? Well, does the LMS system require a signature? There's no easy answer. If it says students must sign electronically with their finger, then we would be picking up that no one's signed it. But if it says you must sign it, then it has to be signed.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this
exactly.
is just another example of picking up the issues in the
Mm,
actual
Mm.
tool.
Yeah,
mm,
absolutely. And in the process,
Mm,
yeah. So obviously if it's done digitally, has like the tick box been checked, has the
mm.
pre-information been done? Yeah.
It's a great mechanism to pick up those issues that students consistently have.
Yeah, yeah. Sally,
Yeah.
do you have any other feedback on based on things that you've seen?
yeah, so I think just it's really important that assessors read the marking guidance. So that's what I see a lot of, that the assessor hasn't really read it. And so say, for example, the question might be like list for, whatever, and then the student's only listed three, but the assessor still marked it as correct. So it's just the
Mm.
assessor actually making sure that they've read the guidance. I mean, I understand why those things happen because everyone's short of time, but yeah.
And another thing, like I haven't done validation in a little while, but a lot of issues that I came up with when I did my last batch was double-barreled questions. Students
Hmm.
never answer double-barreled questions. Like very rarely will you have a student actually respond to both parts of that question. So it's a really nice opportunity to just go, 9 out of 10 students didn't give me the information I needed. That's a problem with my tool. And I need
Mm.
to do a part A and a part B. Answer
Yeah.
first question, answer second question. That's a real common one that I notice a lot. But once again, gives you
Yeah.
that opportunity to fix that tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me and my experience with benchmark answers as well, a tool that really, I quite often see which lacks guidance is observation checklists. So you really want to ensure that, the document that you have and that you're using, is allows for sufficient evidence to be captured when there's practical assessment being recorded. So a lot of checklists, can be seen as tick and flicks. So this relates to, the tool itself, as well as the assessor completing the checklist, So it's not just the tool, it goes both ways. It's the assessor and then also the tool. So to talk about the actual observation checklist first, the benchmark guidance should be sufficient enough to guide the assessor to how a task must be carried out and to what level the task must be performed. So, say for example, if there was a task to mow the lawn, it's simply not enough just to have a task listed as, mow the lawn and then tick the box C or NC, or have the benchmark guidance for the trainer written out, student must mow the lawn. So what the guidance should tell the story of how it should be, has the student filled the mower with petrol? Have they attached the catcher? Have they pressed the primer before starting the mower? Have they set the height of the blades before, beginning to cut the grass, etc. So if you are fully relying on the guidance to the assessor in order to ensure that the evidence is captured, that's really how you need to spell it out. And if you're not going to do it that way, then you would need to have it in the in the tool. So it's either going to be in the tool or in the assessor guidelines. But I really do think it's very important for assessors when they're going through and, marking practical assessments and observing them, they really should be providing some feedback guidance as well. So I saw the student do this, the student did this. So, when they made the cup of tea, the student boiled the kettle, then they put the tea bag in, added some hot water, added a teaspoon of sugar. I know it all takes time, and I know when there's multiple students, it's very hard to run through so many students and with time, frames going through. But I think if there's a few brief statements and a brief lines, it really strengthens the evidence for that tool and can tell you what actual evidence was captured, in order to say, yes, that student's competent. So if you do get an audit and you've said, yep, the student carried out these tasks, you need to sort of like have a story of how, like, you need to show the story of how that student was deemed competent. What did they do to evidence that that task was completed and to an appropriate level?
That's it, Scott. So you sort
Yeah.
of talked about the observation tool, but
Yeah.
kind of saying like the better that is, the better the results and
Yeah.
assessment validation will be. Because yeah, you do sometimes see observation tick lists that are just sort of tick boxes and there's no, comments. And again, I know it's time, but it is good if assessors can put comments in and then this is checked through the validation process.
Yeah.
So I think we're going back to another question in the tool now. So if Ben can flick that up again. So that was around the question that's around plagiarism, cheating, and collusion. So checking for that. I think perhaps Ben hasn't heard that I wanted the tool put back up again, but that's fine.
Oh, it's there. Plagiarism, cheating, or collusion.
Oh, okay. I can't see it for some reason. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see. It's not. Didn't. Sorry, I didn't have it on the admin screen. Sorry. Yeah. So that's another question that we check for now. Just a few years ago, I remember I would do these validations, and I would cut and paste from the students' work into Google. But now, and you would find it sometimes. But now, of course, the issue, and I've just been working on some validation recently, is that, all the student answers are AI generated, and that's been, this has changed in the last couple of years. It's quite, it's quite sort of concerning. And, what I say to clients when they're finding this is, for me, it's so important to make sure that students understand, how they allowed to use AI, and that trainers also understand that. I mean, ideally, we would move. My feelings, we need to move to different assessment methods, but like I think about verbal assessments, for example, but gosh, that's time consuming and therefore more time means more cost. We were chatting about that before this webinar, weren't we, Brooke and Scott?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we just actually found the topic for next month's webinar, guys.
Yay.
Maybe we
Yay.
should discuss assessment and AI. Let's do that next month.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I mean, I was at a uni lecture last night in my oodles of free time that I have. And the assessor was, well, the lecturer was mentioning that we'll probably start to see more verbal assessments in our coursework because they're trying to test like different ways of assessing the student that's not relying on the written form because although you're not allowed to use AI for many assessments, so many people are using it. And it's just so interesting to think. I think we need to flip assessment on its head and completely rethink what it is in relation to vet because your example, Scott, of the lawnmower, right?
Yeah.
Um, Traditionally, you'll have knowledge questions where you have to explain, point to this part of the lawnmower or a visual diagram. Where does, like, I don't actually mow lawns, so I don't know where the blades are and where this is and where that is. But, so here is this and this is this. And then they do the observation. But actually, in performing the demonstration, they are demonstrating their knowledge of where this is, where that is. and
Yeah.
perhaps a reflection after the observation to say, how did safety come into consideration when you were mowing the lawns? Or it
Mm.
might need a complete rethink because just having generic questions that says, how do you start a lawnmower or how do you know what type of petrol your lawnmower needs? Those things are also general, and students, if they can access AI, a lot of the times they are. So, all right,
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
think about that for next month, everyone?
Yeah, it's good. We could even put that in the chat, and depending how many likes it gets. But
Yeah, that,
yeah,
that might work really well.
yeah,
Um,
no, that's cool.
but yeah, we are in a very different landscape now,
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
AI, and this is going to impact, it is already impacting everything as we're seeing with validation. So before we get sidetracked, because we don't have long before we open the floor for questions, once these checks are all made, what happens and what are we doing with the information?
Okay. So there needs to be outcomes. So the outcomes should be summarized and recorded if action is required, and then this also should be noted too. So if a tool needs to be updated, then this should be noted, and then when this action is going to be carried out, and then once it's carried out, note that it's been carried out. So this activity, it informs the development of the tools that you use. And, it's all at the end of the day, it's just also another piece to the continuous improvement puzzle. So as you can see, our validation tool, it also includes a summary of the outcomes and the actions and, what actions are to take place and, when this will occur. So, when you complete all of this, this can be incorporated into the continuous improvement register. And, that certainly informs, future compliance practice. So it really is something that's at the heart of the compliance of the organization. So you want to see that your assessment system works. If it doesn't, or if there's improvements to be made, it's not necessarily that something's wrong. It's just that something could be done better. And
Mm.
then continuous improvement, it's better for everyone. It's better for the RTO and it's better for the student. So
And that's
yeah,
what we want, good student
yep,
outcomes.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. So it really shouldn't be just about, tick and flick, audit and all of that. It's actually doing it so that it does bring meaningful and constructive change.
Mm.
Yeah, that's right. So, if assessment's conducted in a consistent manner and ensures that all the evidence is captured appropriately, you're providing the service to the students that they deserve and what they actually want. So you don't want to go to a course and just, be run through just like, oh, here's the answer, like this. You want to learn, you want to get the outcome that you want. So yeah.
Mm. So we have literally 2 minutes before we open the floor.
Mhm.
And that's great timing because I have one last question for you. I'm going
Mhm.
to direct this one to you, Sally. Um, how we touch on it briefly, but if I need like a firm answer, how many people do you think should be validating each training product? What do you think you would do for your RTO?
I think two's enough because as long as they meet the rules together, then I think that's enough. Two people's enough. I mean, not we don't have, heaps and heaps of time to have big groups of people. And as long as between them, they meet all the appropriate credential and industry requirements, then, why not?
So one is the lead and then one assists, and yeah, that's probably I also think two is plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like, getting it conducted. And if you want to share the results or discuss it with, a team of trainers and assessors or other people in the organization after, then, go for it. But yeah, I agree with you, Sally, for conducting that. Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Mm.
We just had a
Well,
really interesting question about using AI tools to assist with validation. So I was just saying in my chat that that might be something for next time as well, because I know about AI. I know about AI tools that do assessment review, but I don't know about AI tools that do validation. So
mm.
yeah. Anyway,
Well, it is question time. So, Sally, do you want to have a quick look through some of those questions and call out some of the answers? This is for me, this has been a really enjoyable chat. I've personally gotten a lot out of this, so I hope that everybody feels the same way. And we're really happy. We've got over 300 people here live, which is great.
Amazing. Yeah, so
So,
great. It's
yes.
great to see the community coming together and to discuss
Mm.
the big topics. Talk about vet, this is moderation in practice. It's fantastic.
Yeah, sharing ideas and coming up with better ways to do things. Sally, do you have a question or do you want me to call one out?
Yeah, just call them out if you don't mind.
Um, okay, so we've had a couple of these questions now. Christina's asked, how can RTOs use AI from their trainer and assessor's end to save time, yet ensure consistency and compliance? And another question from Saad related, what are your thoughts on RTOs using AI tools to assist with validation? AI can be trained to perform the same work that a qualified industry trainer would do. They don't have the qual. Could they be an assistant validator?
Yeah, I suppose so. Because I mean, you could run you could run the assessment work through some kind of technology. I mean, probably chat could do that. Do you reckon, Brooke? If you run, I don't know. There's
You have
issues
to
there about
build, yeah.
there's privacy issues with that as well. So
Yeah, it's you'd have to come up with a plan and
yeah.
test it. Mohammed's got his hand up. Hello, Mohammed. Nice to
Oh,
have you
hello,
with us.
Brooke. Hello, everyone. I have a comment and a request actually. So, Sally and I did the validation together, and I did with my internal trainer assessor, and also David Gunner, who actually created this validation policy for ASQA. So, in my experience, it is very, very time consuming.
Mm,
So, and also the first time when any manager or the CEO, whoever from the RTO, they do it, it is very easy to get lost. And it is very hard for the trainer assessor to understand that, okay, what is exactly we are looking for. We normally go to the pre-validation or the quality check. He said also, and then when you go to the RTO, ESQA's, the sample size, then it gives you so many samples. If you go to any CPC or any of those assessment, look at the number of questions we have and number of checklists we have. And then want to do one validation, it takes at least 3, 4 days if you really want to do the validation. So
I
we have
think
to, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
sorry. Yeah, I think with that, maybe that boils back down to that sample size issue as well, because like I just find maybe it's because I'm experienced, but I don't need to see many student assessments to see what the issues are. But like yeah, like you say, Mohammed, it probably is difficult for trainers and assessors, and so I do think that structured tool that we've been showing you would
oh,
help.
oh, it
It's
is helping. I've been using it, the previous version and the new version for quite a long time.
yeah.
So I have a request for the next webinar.
Oh
It would
yes.
actually help that if we could do practically something like a validation with Sally, for something like that. So
Okay, so like go through a whole validating
yeah,
everything
like
together.
maybe so application of today's
Yeah.
session. It
Right,
would actually
I'll
help.
get you and I'll get you and Brooke to do one of our
Oh
BSB
no, not me.
assessments. Yeah.
Why are you throwing me in it, Sally?
Oh,
Uh,
And
Scott as well. Scott
And
can do it
Mohammed,
too.
thanks for raising your hand. To anyone who's listening who wants to ask a question, you can just use the raise hand function if you want to, and you don't want to pop it in the chat. There's an interesting question from Allies Trainer or I think
Yeah.
Allies Trainer. How about assessment tools provided by industry regulators?
Yeah, so I was saying in response to that as well that I have seen that in the past that, some of those licensing ones are do have gaps. So I've seen RTOs that do gap assessments for this.
Yeah,
Okay,
so sometimes the assessment for that's created to meet the outcomes for,
Yeah, the
either a
license.
license or a particular job role or something. But when you are validating it, you need to also ensure that it meets the requirements as per the actual training package. So sometimes you might need some gap assessment there or supplementary assessment, and then also just how it's actually that evidence is captured. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm
Yes.
just
Can I just jump in quickly,
yeah,
Brooke?
go for
Just
it, Scott.
there was another question as well. What is retrospective validation? Sorry, that's
Mm.
just the word I used, retrospective, because I was trying to differentiate between assessment review and validation.
Revalidation.
So
Yeah.
as we
Yeah.
said before, previously we were talking pre-validation and post-validation. In 2026, assessment review and validation. So when I was saying retrospective, I was meaning it's looking back on the assessment that was conducted and how it was marked and so forth. So yeah, I was just meaning that I was just using that word. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's an interesting sort of question that I suppose could spark a conversation from Miguel. What about templates provided by the RTO to students? Some students make their own templates. Should trainers enforce the use of RTO templates only? And I personally think, well, that depends on how, like, what do the tools say? Do the tools say you can use your own template, but we've
Yeah.
provided you one if you want to use ours, or does it say you must use this template? Or if it says you must use this template and students have found that it's not a good template and they've created their own, then that's an opportunity to go, oh, our template's not actually that good. That's why students are creating their own because it doesn't have enough rows or columns or um, so once again, it's one of those gray areas, Miguel, where your validation is really giving you the info, like so much data that you can then analyze and improve the practice.
There's a question about from Binu. What about UOCs, which are primarily elective self-paced for students, and where the trainer feedback on student work is not necessitated? How in depth should the marking process be in such cases? I suppose if it's obviously if the questions were multiple choice, then there's it's either it's one answer and that's it type thing. But I guess it just depends on what the assessments are, really, isn't it?
Mm.
At the end of the day.
There's a question from Madden about our tools with the logbook and saying we get the students to complete the logbook for all cookery units alongside their service planning and task one question answers. The logbooks provided by you requires the supervisor to sign the declaration and underneath each journal. Do we really need it? Trainers are already providing their training in the RTO kitchen class. Don't we just need the observation checklist done by the trainer assessor? Do we need the logbook for their kitchen class session as well? And once again, that goes down to we've provided a tool that works for different cohorts. Like it might be used in the workplace, it might be used in the training kitchen, and we don't personally know how you're going to be using it. So if you want to modify your tool, then you should modify it. If it's all being conducted in the training in the classroom or the cafe on site at the school, then perhaps it's not necessary and you could remove that. But once again, that's a decision that each RTO will make. And the data that you're getting from your validation, if you're seeing, oh, this is all happening in the kitchen where we are, there's no point, then let's just remove it. And that's just another continual improvement practice that you guys will be undertaking. So yeah, when we create our tools, it's with a broader audience in mind. So um, and you're welcome to modify our tools as well.
Someone, Jane asked, can the industry expert who do not hold the qualification listed in the slide that Scott showed participate in the validation as an external member? Yes, absolutely. As long as the group collectively hold all the qualifications they can. And that can, if you can have an industry person, this is probably where they're useful, because I always think that, when you do industry consultation with industry experts or assessment review, it's kind of it's very vet, it's hard for them
Mm.
to understand. But if they're looking at answers in questions that, they'll be able to tell, like, is that right or wrong? Is the marking guidance right or wrong? So if you can have them and you can afford it, awesome.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Prakash has asked, is it mandatory to have RTO's logo, header, and footer in the assessment? Um,
No.
no, that's just a way, that's just a practice. So as long as you've got it somewhere, it doesn't need to be in the footer of every document. There's no hard and fast rule about that.
Yeah. With talking about AI and plagiarism and collusion. There's so many websites out there at the moment where you can run samples through, and it's probably best to get a subscription as well. So that way you can see whether you think, whether it's, what percentage a student's work is authentic or, whether it's, human created, and then you can judge yourself whether you think, okay, this is the student's own work and, or whether this is AI generated or taken from somewhere online or some other writings and that. So I think that's really good to sample through or even get subscriptions to like some programs like that. There's many of them out there at the moment, and that can also really reinforce the validations that occur.
We've got another couple. Daniel says, is it acceptable to conduct validation internally if the validator is a different trainer who delivers the same course rather than using an external validator? Yeah, you don't need to use an external validator, Daniel. It can be you can do it all internally, provided that all the requirements are met. Scott, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, no. So as long as you meet the requirements of it, you can do it all in-house. Yeah, you don't need to have someone who's, you know, from outside. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
And Gulnaz asks,
Yeah.
can lead validator upgrade assignment after validation? I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, Gulnaz.
Yeah,
Do you mean
I asked about that, Brooke. I said change the outcome. So say like during a validation, you realize that the student work, the student quest, didn't meet the marking guidance or it was marked incorrectly. So basically he's that they're asking, can you go back and change the outcome? So I don't see why not. You can do that. I mean, obviously for the student, they're probably going to be a bit annoyed that, they were marked, say, competent um, and or not competent. Mohammed's raising his arm there, aren't you, Mohammed? Do you want to
Yes,
say something?
sorry. In that case, I had a similar experience in one of the RTOs. So in that case, what I identified that the student will be disadvantaged. And what I found, and we just did a quick gap assessment and attach it to the assessment for the whole group.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Yeah.
okay, great.
Gosh. Yeah, and then Harjeet says, how many questions can we verbally assess in written assessments, especially MCQ type questions? Well, you can assess as many as you like. It's really just the practicalities, isn't it? As long as there's an authentic mechanism, like you could actually record the student answering the questions, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Ashraful also asks, if two teachers are required for a validation, what if the RTO has only one teacher holding that qualification? How will they perform that validation?
Yeah, so two teachers aren't required, like two people. So, I mean, for example, I do validations. I'm not a trainer, but I do have the training qualification, and I work with another trainer assessor who's essentially the subject matter
Yeah, so
expert.
Ashraful, you don't have to have the qualification in order to validate the assessment. So I don't have a qualification in building and construction, but I can be involved in the validation process because I have the vet quals. So you could have another teacher from a different area validating with that teacher for a subject they're not qualified in because it's not from the subject matter, it's going through the process of are the benchmark answers, correct? Have the students answered the assessment correctly? Think of it like ASQA as well. ASQA auditors, they're not subject matter experts in everything that they audit. They're just going through a process that means they will hopefully pick up all those errors.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly, someone put in what are the name of some AI checkers. So there's so many. There's Scriber, Grammarly, Turnitin, My Detector. So there's a whole bunch, and all of them, most of them you can use for free for a limited while, but it's probably best to get a subscription, and that way you can use it to its full extent.
Gulnaz says, I've not raised any questions. This is Gulnaz. There's actually two Gulnazes on our webinar today, so it was a different Gulnaz. But thank you for introducing yourself. Well, that's time, guys. We've really enjoyed having you all here. Thank you very much for turning up today and being with us. If you would like access to the assessment validation tool that Scott used on screen today, if you purchase our RTO management system or you have it, it's included in that pack. If you do want to purchase just a small pack, not our whole RMS, you can just get the assessment review and validation pack from our website. It's $200. It's got a policy, procedures, the tool from last month and the tool that we use today. So you could jump online and purchase that if you particularly want to use our tool. You can make your own tool. You can use another pre-existing one. But it's just really important that, we do this process and we do it well. So we're really happy to spend the hour with you. We look forward to spending another hour with you again next month.
And
And thank
Brooke,
you
there
to
were a
Sally.
couple of questions. There were a couple of questions that haven't been answered. If anyone wants to
Okay.
email me, or if your question wasn't answered, or Scott, we're happy to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Just email them through. It went so quick. I feel like we could have spoken about this
Super quick.
for,
Super quick.
go
And
on and
we
on.
also do validation services. So if you did want an external person to help you, even if you wanted someone to help set up a schedule for you and put you on the right track and then you continue on, we can create something or spend an hour or two working with you to do that. That's part of our consulting services. So yeah, please get in touch with the team if you need anything and any questions that weren't answered, Sally or Scott would love to answer them for you via email.
Absolutely.
Thanks,